Just hours after one of the most talked about interviews of his career, Mel Gibson found himself at the center of a scandal that dominated headlines around the world. The arrest didn't just shock fans, it threatened to change the way Hollywood viewed one of its biggest stars forever. But what really happened that night? How did a celebrated Oscar-winning filmmaker go from career-defining success to one of the industry's most controversial public figures? The truth is more complex than many people remember, revealing a story of fame, personal struggles, public consequences, and a long road toward rebuilding a damaged reputation. Long before the headlines, long before the controversy, and long before one night changed everything. Mel Gibson was one of the biggest stars in the world. There was a time when his name alone could fill movie theaters. Audiences admired his charisma. Studios trusted him with huge budgets. And directors knew he could carry almost any film. But none of that happened overnight. Mel Columcille Gerard Gibson was born on January 3rd, 1956, in Peekskill, New York. When he was 12 years old, his family moved to Australia, where his life took a very different direction. At first, acting wasn't even part of his plan. In fact, it was his older sister who secretly submitted an application for him to attend the National Institute of Dramatic Art, one of Australia's most respected acting schools. He was accepted. That unexpected decision would change his life forever. After graduating, Gibson began performing in theater and small television roles. He had talent, confidence, and a screen presence that was impossible to ignore. Then came the role that introduced him to the world. In 1979, Gibson starred as Max Rockatansky in Mad Max. The film was made on a relatively small budget. No one expected it to become an international sensation, but audiences loved its fast-paced action and Gibson's intense performance. Almost overnight, a new action star had arrived. The success of Mad Max opened even bigger doors. Just 2 years later, Gibson appeared in Mad Max 2, known in some countries as The Road Warrior. The sequel became an even greater success and helped establish him as one of the most recognizable faces in action cinema. Hollywood quickly took notice. Soon, Gibson was no longer just an Australian star. He was becoming an international celebrity. Then came another career-defining role. In 1987, Gibson teamed up with Danny Glover for Lethal Weapon. His character, Martin Riggs, was fearless, unpredictable, and unforgettable. The chemistry between Gibson and Glover turned the film into a massive hit. It also launched one of Hollywood's most successful action franchises. By the early 1990s, Gibson had become one of the highest-paid actors in the entertainment industry. He could make audiences laugh, keep them on the edge of their seats, or move them with emotional performances. Few actors had that kind of range. But Gibson wasn't satisfied with acting alone. He wanted to tell stories from behind the camera. Many people doubted whether an action star could become a respected director. Gibson quietly proved them wrong. In 1995, he directed and starred in Braveheart. The film became a worldwide success. It won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Gibson. Suddenly, he wasn't just a movie star. He was one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers. That achievement changed everything. It showed he could lead both in front of the camera and behind it. Over the next several years, Gibson continued taking creative risks. His 2004 film The Passion of the Christ became one of the highest-grossing independent films ever made. Although it sparked widespread discussion and criticism alongside praise, its commercial success was undeniable. By this point, Gibson seemed unstoppable. He had fame, wealth, awards, global recognition. From the outside, his career looked nearly perfect. Here's something to think about. If you had achieved everything you'd ever dreamed of, what would matter most, success, happiness, or peace of mind? Share your thoughts in the comments. But fame often hides struggles that the public cannot see. The cameras capture premieres, the awards, the applause. They rarely capture the personal battles happening behind closed doors. As Gibson's success reached incredible heights, pressure followed. Every decision made headlines. Every interview attracted attention. And every mistake became front-page news. Then came one interview that placed him under an even brighter spotlight. Within hours, A single night would begin one of the biggest controversies of his career. What happened next didn't just affect Mel Gibson's future. It changed the way Hollywood and the world looked at him. By the summer of 2006, Mel Gibson had reached a level of fame that very few people ever experience. He wasn't just an actor. He was an Academy Award-winning director, a producer, a box office powerhouse, and one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Every public appearance became news. Every interview was carefully examined. Reporters wanted to know what project he would make next. Fans wanted another blockbuster. The entertainment industry expected Gibson to remain one of its biggest stars for years to come. From the outside, everything looked stable, but public success doesn't always reveal private struggles. In interviews around that time, Gibson often spoke about filmmaking, his passion for storytelling, and enormous responsibility that came with directing large productions. He appeared confident, relaxed, and focused on the future. Few people watching those interviews could have imagined what would happen next, because within hours, the conversation around Mel Gibson would change completely. Late on the night of July 28, 2006, and into the early hours of July 29th, Gibson was stopped by a deputy from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in Malibu, California, for driving significantly over the speed limit. What began as a routine traffic stop quickly became international news. According to official reports, officers observed signs of intoxication. Gibson was arrested on suspicion of driving under the influence. His blood alcohol level was later reported to be above California's legal limit. But it wasn't only the arrest that shocked people. During the arrest, Gibson made a series of offensive remarks that were later reported publicly. Those comments drew immediate and widespread condemnation. Within hours, headlines around the world focused on the incident. Television networks interrupted regular entertainment coverage. Newspapers placed the story on their front pages. The internet exploded with debate. For many fans, it was difficult to reconcile the successful filmmaker they admired with the behavior described in the reports. Hollywood reacted quickly. Industry leaders criticized the reported remarks. Media commentators questioned whether Gibson's career could recover. Some believed the damage was permanent. Others argued that people should wait before drawing conclusions. Regardless of opinion, one fact was undeniable. The story had become much bigger than a traffic arrest. It was now a global controversy. Here's something to think about. Do you believe one public mistake should define a person's entire life, or should people be judged by how they respond afterward? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Within days, Gibson issued a public statement apologizing for his behavior. He acknowledged that he had been struggling with alcoholism and described his actions that night as deeply shameful. He also apologized for the offensive remarks attributed to him and said they did not reflect his true beliefs. The apology became one of the most closely watched celebrity statements of the year. Some people accepted it. Others remained skeptical. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild, and Gibson was about to learn that lesson in the most public way possible. The arrest marked a turning point. Before that night, conversations about Mel Gibson focused on award-winning films and blockbuster performances. After that night, the conversation changed. His personal life became as famous as his professional achievements. The consequences would reach far beyond a single court case. They would affect future movie projects, professional relationships, and his place in Hollywood for years to come. In the next chapter, we'll examine the verified aftermath of the arrest, the legal outcome, the industry's reaction, and how one night reshaped one of Hollywood's biggest careers. If you're finding this documentary insightful, subscribe now. The next chapter explores the fallout that followed and why rebuilding a reputation proved far more difficult than building one in the first place. When the headlines finally slowed, the consequences were only beginning. For Mel Gibson, the 2006 DUI arrest wasn't just another celebrity scandal. It became a defining moment, one that would follow him for years. The legal process itself was relatively straightforward. Gibson pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor DUI charge. He received probation, was fined, and was required to complete an alcohol education program, along with other court-ordered conditions. Legally, the case was resolved. Publicly, it was far from over. The reported remarks made during the arrest sparked widespread criticism from advocacy groups, public figures, and many within the entertainment industry. For many people, the issue was no longer about drunk driving alone. It was also about accountability, respect, and whether someone in a position of influence should face lasting consequences for offensive behavior. Gibson responded with public apologies. He admitted he had struggled with alcohol for many years and acknowledged that alcoholism had affected his judgment. In several interviews over following years, he said he was committed to sobriety and to taking responsibility for his actions. But apologies don't erase the past. They are only the beginning. The real challenge is rebuilding trust, and that takes time. Hollywood, meanwhile, became noticeably quieter. For years after the controversy, Gibson appeared in fewer high-profile studio projects. Some major filmmakers and studios kept their distance. His name, once associated almost entirely with blockbuster success, now carried controversy as well. To many observers, it seemed as though one of Hollywood's biggest careers had come to a sudden stop. Yet Gibson didn't disappear. Instead, he continued working, often on smaller projects or independent productions. The spotlight wasn't as bright, but he kept making films. Behind the scenes, he also continued developing projects as a director. Then came one of the biggest surprises of his career. In 2016, Gibson directed Hacksaw Ridge. The film told the true story of Desmond Doss, a U.S. Army medic who served during World War II without carrying a weapon. The movie received widespread critical acclaim. It earned multiple Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director for Gibson. For the first time in years, the conversation began to shift. People weren't only discussing the controversy, they were also discussing the quality of his filmmaking. Some viewed Hacksaw Ridge as evidence that Gibson remained one of Hollywood's most talented directors. Others believed his past should continue to influence how his work was judged. The debate never completely disappeared, and perhaps it never will. Here's something to think about. Can someone rebuild public trust after making serious mistakes? What matters more, the mistake itself or the action someone takes afterward? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments. Over time, Gibson continued acting in new films while remaining active as a filmmaker. His career didn't return to exactly what it had been before 2006, but it didn't end either. Instead, it entered a different chapter, one shaped by both achievement and controversy. That's what makes his story so complex. It's not a simple tale of success or failure. It's a reminder that public figures can create extraordinary work while also facing serious consequences for their actions. Understanding both sides is essential to understanding the full story. In the final chapter, we'll look at how history now views Mel Gibson's legacy, why opinions about him remain deeply divided, and what lessons his journey offers about fame, accountability, and redemption. Everyone makes mistakes, but not every mistake happens under the eyes of the entire world. How a person responds afterward often becomes just as important as the moment that changed everything. Nearly 2 decades have passed since the night that changed Mel Gibson's public image forever. Yet people still ask the same question. How should history remember him? As an award-winning actor? A visionary director? A controversial public figure? Or all of the above? The honest answer is that Mel Gibson's legacy cannot be reduced to a single headline. Before the controversy, he helped redefine the modern action hero through films like Mad Max and Lethal Weapon. As a director, he earned some of Hollywood's highest honors with Braveheart and later returned with the critically acclaimed Hacksaw Ridge. His influence on cinema is undeniable. At the same time, the events of 2006 and later controversies in his personal life became an important part of his public story. Those incidents affected how audiences, colleagues, and the entertainment industry viewed him. For some people, those actions permanently changed their opinion of him. For others, his later efforts to acknowledge wrongdoing, seek treatment for alcoholism, and continue working as a filmmaker demonstrated that people can try to rebuild their lives after serious mistakes. There is no universal answer, and that's why Gibson's story continues to spark debate. It raises difficult questions about fame, accountability, forgiveness, and whether extraordinary artistic achievement can or should be separated from personal conduct. These aren't easy questions. They don't have simple answers, but they remain relevant every time a public figure faces controversy. One thing is clear. The arrest that followed that 2006 interview became far more than a single news story. It changed the direction of Gibson's career. It reshaped his public image, and it became one of Hollywood's most discussed examples of how quickly success can be overshadowed by personal choices. Here's one final question. Do you think a person's legacy should be judged only by their greatest achievements, only by their worst mistakes, or by the complete story of both? Share your respectful opinion in the comments. Perhaps the biggest lesson from Mel Gibson's journey is that fame offers no protection from consequences. Success can take decades to build. Trust can be damaged in a single night, and rebuilding a reputation often takes far longer than earning one in the first place. His story is neither a simple comeback tale nor a complete downfall. It is a complicated human story, one filled with remarkable achievements, serious mistakes, public accountability, and ongoing debate. Whether people admire his films, criticize his actions, or wrestle with both at the same time, one fact remains. Mel Gibson's career has become one of the most complex stories in modern Hollywood history. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe now for more fact-based stories exploring the lives, triumphs, controversies, and legacies of Hollywood's biggest stars. And don't miss our next documentary, where we'll uncover another shocking celebrity moment that changed a legendary career almost overnight, and reveal the truth behind the headlines. Because sometimes, the biggest turning point in a person's life doesn't happen on a movie set. It happens when the cameras aren't supposed to be rolling.